Get ready to fight, to give it your all. Tonight's the night, we're invincible.
Cruisers. Low and comfortable seat, relaxed ergonomics, not really my cup of tea. So, when I was handed the keys to this Super Meteor, I was a bit apprehensive. But you know what? This also presented an opportunity to understand this genre better and perhaps change my perception too. So, after 3 months and 7,000 kilometers, here's what I liked and disliked about the Super Meteor 650. Now let's start with something that I hate the most about cruisers. Their suspension. Now if you have seen our previous videos featuring the Super Meteor, you probably know that this bike is no different. But it's not entirely the bike's fault. The design of the rolling chassis of a cruiser limits the suspension travel, especially at the rear. And the way you are seated, the jolts of any broken surface you encounter are sent straight to your back. Thankfully, I have the Celestial variant here, which comes with this thick touring seat that absorbs most bumps on the road. But even that helps just to a certain extent. And to understand how this bike works on broken tarmac, you really need to understand how this Showa suspension works. For me, it took 2 rides to Bombay and back to understand how this suspension works. And once I got hang of things, the ride was a little better. And once I understood how quick the rebound setting on this bike are, I started planning things a bit better. But even then, I wouldn't prefer this bike's suspension setting over anything except good highways. And you know how rare it is to find one of those in India. Now let's talk about something that despite all this saddle time is still irritating and something that I haven't been able to wrap my head around. These rotary style switches. Now this starter switch, that's still fine. But this headlight switch is just damn irritating. So every time I have to overtake a vehicle, I need to get my thumb around and use the switch, which is not at all intuitive. And being accustomed to the traditional button, on more than one occasion, I ended up pressing the console button instead of the pass switch. So a couple of months ago, a colleague was moving this bike out of the parking and unfortunately, he tipped it over and the lever broke. And given this bike's heft, I don't really blame him. But it's been 2 months since this lever broke and we still haven't got a replacement. Okay, that probably might change once RE starts stocking up parts for this bike. But since then, I've gotten used to this shoddy lever and it's working fine. But people with smaller fingers in the office, they really find this unusable. And imagine if it was the case for me, this bike would have been sitting idle for 2 months just because of a broken lever. Now, let's talk about some good bits about the Super Meteor 650, shall we? So after long hours of testing and shooting, heading back to my home in Bombay is a bit tiring. But the Super Meteor 650, that has made things so much more bearable. For some context, earlier my Pune-Bombay-Pune sprints used to happen on my previous long-termer, the Continental GT650, and my very own KTM RC200. So yeah, the Super Meteor is definitely a welcome change. Seated on that comfortable touring seat with my legs stretched forward and tucked behind this windshield, it has always been a great ride back home after a tiring week. I know cruisers are meant for that chill kind of ride, but somehow with the Super Meteor 650, I ended up doing higher speeds than I would normally do. So going 100 kilometers per hour, easy. Cruising at 120 kilometers per hour, easy peasy. In fact, whenever I wanted to sustain say 60-70 kilometers per hour, it would do that perfectly. And getting back to triple digits, well, I was there in no time. If this was the Interstellar variant, things would have been more tiring. Thankfully, with this, it's all the more easy. Or might I say, this is perhaps the chill kind of riding for this motorcycle. And in this regard, this engine almost makes you forget that you are riding a cruiser, to the point where I have been grinding pegs through corners. And of course, all this performance is complemented by this chassis. Going hard on the throttle is also so much fun because the way this 240 plus kilo bike halts. Yes, the brakes are sharp and the way the rear brake and the ABS are tied together scares you initially. So yes, once you step on the rear brake, it does lock up initially and it does give you scary moments. But once you understand how it works and how it always gets the bike back on track, it's almost a fun experience. Okay, so this is not a loud bike. And this isn't really a Jatang color too, but boy, the amount of attention it gets. People aren't really used to seeing a cruiser of this proportion perhaps, especially a Royal Enfield. And the first question that almost everyone asks me about this motorcycle is the fuel efficiency, which is around 29 kilometers per liter. That's if I'm gentle with my right wrist. Not bad for a 650cc heavyweight, right?
When you gonna let me back here? What you waiting on? When you gonna stop playing games I ain't falling for? Now I'm losing my mind. I'm still trying, but I ain't gonna win. I've been hoping, now I'm hoping you're gonna give back what you take, 'cause you always get what you own.
So how was my journey with the Super Meteor 650? Has it changed my perception about cruisers? Well, definitely. But I'm still not a big fan of the suspension, and that has kept me from taking this bike on so many great locations. However, for my Pune-Bombay-Pune sprints, especially after a tiring weekend, this is something I would go for. Unfortunately, the Super Meteor is heading back, and before I could take it on a long ride. But the fact that I considered a cruiser for a long ride has made me wonder how its bratty sibling, the Shotgun 650, is going to be. So that was my journey with the Super Meteor 650. Do consider clicking on the like, share and subscribe buttons. And if you too are excited about the Shotgun 650, hit that little bell notification icon. Until then, ciao.